Ki te tonga, kia makina kina ki uta, kia matara tara ki tai. Hei ehi ake ana te atakura, hei tio, hei hoka, hei hohu, tihei mauri ora. Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to note some scheduling times so that the public, who I'm sure are all tuned into this, the final sort of working meeting of the council, not the final meeting. So just before 11 o'clock, we'll deal with item 25, the CCHL appointment of proxy for AGM. At 11, we'll go into public excluded until 12 o'clock, and that means that we'll take our 15-minute adjournment from 11 to 11:15, and then back at 11:15 as we have an external scheduled for PX item 39. So this is just to facilitate matters, and then we'll continue to deal with the public excluded items. I'm hoping that we can conclude those by 12 o'clock, but we will return to the public session at 12 regardless, and then we'll continue on till 1 o'clock. I have a 1 till 2, which is when lunch is scheduled, and then back at 2 if required, she says, hopefully. I have apologies from Catherine Chu and Zooming in Councillor Goff and Councillor Chen, and I have a partial absence from Anne Galloway. Sorry?
Councillor Donovan as well.
Oh, and Councillor Donovan is also on Zoom. So would someone like to move that? Pauline, seconded. Sarah, I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Councillors Turner and Davidson declared an interest in item 24 and public excluded item 39. I entirely disagree with me having declared a public PX on item, a declaration of interest on 25, which is the CCHL appointment of proxy for an AGM that's going to happen after I'm a private citizen again and no longer on the board of CCHL. So it seems pretty redundant to me, but there you go. But the other members of the CCHL board for public excluded item 39 as well. The public participation, we come to public forum, and there are no public forum presentations. We did have a request for a deputation by appointment, but councillors have assured me that there are no questions for the individual who wanted to make a presentation on an item that has changed by nature of further discussions that have been held. Presentation of petitions, there are none, and so the next one is Te Tira Kahiku August and September 2022, and I'd like to invite Chrissy Williams to come forward.
Oh, sorry, I'll fix those.
Yeah. Kia ora, good morning.
Good morning, councillors and Madam Mayor. Thank you. We've just have two minutes to present today. That should say the 13th of September, not the 16th, not the 3rd of September. So just talking to Te Tira Kahiku reports, most of what we're seeing coming through at the moment from LINZ are extensions of existing leases. So you'll remember that LINZ was giving 6-month leases or until the land transferred to council. So with some discussion and agreement, we've just decided that all the current leases will now change to until the land transfers to council. So we've just been LINZ has been presenting those to us, and we've been extending the leases until the land transfers to council. So quite a few of the reports in both August and September were about that. A couple were for events, one a new event, one a recurring event. And we did have 3 new applications considered on Tuesday night at our last meeting, which was one for a community garden, one for a planting nursery, but one that's sort of been sitting around for quite a long time for the Revolution Tiny House group. They've been looking for a site to investigate, so they asked for a licence for the land in Glade Avenue that's got a housing overlay, edge housing overlay on it, and they're going to investigate whether that's going to be suitable for their purposes, which we've been encouraging them because it means their consenting pathway will be much easier than trying to go anywhere else in the red zone that doesn't have that overlay. So that's quite exciting. Obviously, the final decision about whether that goes ahead will be with the co-governance group. We also had our last funding application was from the Avon Loop Planning Association, and they've been working with Avon Otakere Network and with the Christchurch East School, but they're looking at the area as you come into the red zone as a peace park. And those of you who have been around for quite a while will know that there's been very many discussions about peace parks. The old Turners and Growers site was suggested when it was looking at going into council ownership many years ago. So, but the area that they're looking at is where Elsie Locke lived and a number of other people who were peace activists. So they've asked for some money to get a landscape plan done, so they can then discuss it with the community. So they don't have high expectations that there'll be a whole lot physically done in there. It's not on the budget for council, but they're progressing the idea and working with Kate Jews and her disarmament group. So to me, again, that's moving along, and with the Locke family. So the meeting on Tuesday night is the last meeting of our group for this council term. And probably the last meeting of our group, because with the co-governance set up, it would be confusing for people to have both Te Tere Kahiki running and the co-governance group. But the new council needs to just make that decision whether it continues or not, and the staff advice will be that it doesn't continue. So we're hoping to have something in a couple of weeks to acknowledge the work that group's done, and I thank Sarah for coming to our meeting on Tuesday night to acknowledge the work the group has done. So, the public excluded meetings. So, but it was really really lovely to have someone there to because the risk is that we'll just sort of drift away. LINZ have now admitted that the transfer of land from LINZ to council is going to take longer than they've ever been saying, so at least until Christmas next year. So you're aware that TTK's been making recommendations to LINZ about temporary uses. So during the next year, there could still be some temporary uses coming through to LINZ, and if TTK's not there, they're probably not items that want to be taken to the co-governance group. So the staff suggestion, which I support, is that the reports go to the community board, and it makes more sense the way the community boards are now going to be grouped, because you've got just coastal, Burwood, and
Central.
Central. No.
Linwood.
So most of the corridor is in that community board area, and South Shore, South New Brighton, and Brooklands, and then you've got Heathcote, Spraid, and Cashmere, where most of the Port Hills red zone is in. So those community boards can get up to date with what's happening with those areas. There's a little bit that is in Central around Avon Loop, I think. So so that's something that has to be discussed, and where the delegations sit for making those decisions once the co-governance group's set up. And then just the last thing I'd just say, two last things. The group expressed disappointment that we were not informed about the disposal of land to a private landowner in Fitzgerald Avenue, Harvey Terrace, and that the council were pursuing with the landowners a plan change. I'm not sure, we would have certainly given some feedback on our views on it, but we didn't have that opportunity. So it's happened certainly outside of our purview, and it sort of makes a mockery of TTK. But what it says to me is that the co-governance group needs to very quickly get when it's up and running, make some policy decisions about disposal of land, and work with LINZ on disposal of land, so that we're not getting that sort of conflict. So that's really my report, Mayor and Councillors. I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Look, I kind of want to reflect on the significance of the work that you've done, but you've ended on that, the jarring note of the decision by Linz to transfer properties, and I still haven't got to the bottom of all of it as well. I got an email on, I think, Sunday or Monday, but I literally submitted the questions on Monday, and I still haven't quite got to the bottom of it. But I can assure you that councillors were not told that Linz were selling individual properties within the red zone. So I'm just going to share your sense of disquiet about the appropriateness of such decisions proceeding without any oversight of governance, as well as your group, which has played such a significant role in managing what is a difficult but transitional and potentially transformative environment. So, I kind of feel like that we owe you an apology, but I think we're owed an apology as well. So as I say, I don't have all of the facts in front of me, but I am going to make sure that I do get that last little bit of information that helps me understand how councillors were not informed about it. I'm very familiar with the area because I was the MP well, I wasn't the MP for the area, but I did speak to one of the landowners who was not going to sell to the government as a result of the red zoning decision that affected her property. Yes, so there are a number of issues sitting in there, but I think that you've raised it and it deserves a response. So I think we'll get a response from the council. So if we could just, apart from noting the Mayor will send a letter of thanks to members of Te Tira Kahiku Hiku Committee for their service, I'll also say we'll advise the outcome of investigations as to the transfer of property, and it's the property at on the corner of Harvey Terrace and Fitzgerald Avenue.
Yeah, there is one other that's been a transfer as well in Swans,
and it was
Swans Road.
And I think there was
I'm not aware that we were advised of any of them. So the transfer of properties in the Otakaro Avon River corridor.
Yeah, thanks, Leanne. That would be good. And I mean, the community's now stuck because there's a plan change that's under the RMA. That so, we all know how restrictive submissions are on the RMA, and very little chance to make any difference there.
Yeah, I think that's why I got the email at the last minute. Sort of, why is this going through an RMA process when we don't know about it? Yeah. All right, so I'll follow up on that and provide you with some advice on it. And I mean, some of what I'm going to say, I actually wanted to sort of make a bit of a statement about the role that you've played, but I might actually include that in my final Mayor's report, which will be at the more of the at the end of the month. And so that it's actually documented in the final Mayor's report as to the role that was played. But I just did want to acknowledge just how much of a difference you have made and the group has made in terms of considering all of the temporary land use application reports, the red zone transitional use funder applications, and other types of reports. I mean, you've been completely embedded in the community, and it's made such a huge difference. I think it's, the amount that you've been able to distribute to community groups through that transitional or transformational sort of use fund has really enabled the establishment of really diverse aspects of the corridor. And I just had in my notes here community nurseries, eco-source plants, mushroom gardens and child-led play activities, just to give an extent of the breadth and the depth of the work that has been done. So I wanted to personally thank you while you're here, but I think I'll make more of a formal record in my final mayor's report, just to wrap that up.
And if we do have a gathering arranged by the staff, it would be lovely if you could be invited to that, Leanne. So, just a couple of the 20. There's only about 20,000 left sitting in the fund, and that's nothing. And you spend that, like that in here. But I think it's important that that's retained with a transformative use and fund, and sits with probably with one of the community boards, or however you want to but it's not lost because there are still a few projects sitting there. So yeah, just that, and in response to your comments, Leanne, the group has worked really well together. We've worked under consensus decision making. That I think we've had one vote in the whole time, but there's been some quite strong relationships built, and I think that's a huge benefit of the group. So
yeah, Yanni.
I mean, for those of us that have red zone in our area, it might be nice for us all to be invited to say thank you as well. So I don't know if that can happen, but it would be. Yeah.
Far away.
Good. And then I wondered with the 3. Oh, did you hear? Or yeah, did you hear what I said? Or?
I just said I was inviting you to say thank you.
Oh yeah, sorry. I thought to the group. Yeah. Were you talking about a special occasion to say thank you to the working?
Oh no.
It's all right.
Now,
that's completely different.
The point that I'm going to make is this: that Chrissy indicated that there was an event that she was going to invite me to,
Yeah.
and you're indicating that you want to be invited to it by the group as well.
Well, I just thought it'd be nice for the councillors, for the areas where the work has been done, to be able to say thank you in person to the people, but that's okay.
Chrissy will take that
if
on
people
board.
disagree with that, that's
it's
fine.
not my event. It's council staff will be organising it. So and
Yeah, okay.
there's already 5 elected members there.
Yeah.
So just under 3, I just wonder if we should be writing to the minister as well, because it does seem really unsatisfactory what's happened, and it is.
Can I just get to the bottom of it first? I just would like to find out what happened before I start writing letters to ministers.
And we can put it with all the other letters that we've written to them.
No. Come on, this is the last formal business meeting.
Because it's really upset people, and rightfully so.
Yanni?
And, yeah. So thank you. Cool.
Settled. Thank you. Sarah.
I'm just wondering if a resolution's needed to make sure that we keep that last bit of funding for the transitional uses in the red zone.
I think it's just assumed, isn't it? Do you need a resolution?
Yeah.
We,
That'll just happen.
we already have a policy around grant funding, so it
Okay,
will stay.
that's cool.
Yep. Only 20k. It's not. Unless you want to put some more money into it.
All right. Well, look, I'll move the resolutions. Would someone like to second them, Sarah? Is there any debate? Yanni?
Thank you to the group and to Chrissy for the work that they've done. Yeah, it is very much appreciated, and I understand the frustrations that have been raised around some of the other processes.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chrissy. The resolution to include the supplementary reports, I'll move that. Seconded by Pauline. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you. Then we move to the council minutes, and have we got additional? Okay. So the Christchurch West Melton Zone Committee. Pauline, do you want to just quickly speak to this?
I will. They just in their minutes of the
their July meeting, they had a deputation concerning sediment coming off a housing development up in Redcliffs, and so they resolved to get a briefing on that in their following August meeting. And for the August meeting, they requested that the City Council begins an audit of the environmental effectiveness there in 6A. So they can't tell us what to do. They can make a recommendation to us, and I'm thinking it would be quite good if we picked up on that. Staff advice is that it's a little bit late in the term for us to sanction that work. It'd be better coming to the next council, and it might require annual plan funding. So I think that's quite wise. I just wanted it noted here so that it's not lost, because I think it's a really, really important thing we need to do to look at the sediment. And as we can see in 7A, Leanne, I believe you've already had discussions with the Minister on the sediment issue that he's pretty hot on as well. But hopefully that association will continue in the incoming council. So I suggest that we put this as a resolution at the end of the Zone Committee minutes.
Thank you. So would you like to move the whole set of minutes,
Yeah.
including this?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Do I have a seconder for that? Andrew Turner? Is there any discussion? Put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. We've got the audit and risk. We've done them. Yeah. So we've got the. Now, I just wonder whether we should go on to the Mayor's report, because people seem to be rather excited about the Mayor's report, which would be a unique occasion. So thank you. Thank you for doing that. And so, sorry, I've just got to open it now. So the Mayor's report is well, it's not entirely standard. It's got two summaries attached to it. One is the Canterbury Mayoral Forum achievements. So it's just a draft summary of the achievements of the work of the Canterbury Mayoral Forum over the triennium. And I think you'll see that there's been a substantial amount of work that's been done on a collaborative basis with our regional colleagues. And then also the World Cities Summit report, which I attended, and Lynn McClellan, of course, has she's written the report for me, but it was a great opportunity to reconnect with some of the cities that we are closely connected to, the Resilient Cities Network, but also some of the taking on some of the challenges that that are being taken on at a global scale, particularly in relation to water. And I just wanted to reflect for 1 second on meeting up again with the Mayor of Rotterdam and Henk Ovink, who is essentially the water ambassador for the Netherlands. He was going to come here as a result of an earlier meeting that I had with him in 2019. He was going to come here in 2020, but he had to Zoom into the meeting as opposed to turn up in person. And I really want to recommend to the incoming council that you continue to build on that relationship and grow it, understanding some of the challenges that the Netherlands have had to take on in terms of living with water. So they're not trying to fight the water, they're talking about how you live with water. That is absolutely going to be something that's going to be of interest all around the world. And we have got a really good positive relationship with them to build on. So I want to recommend that to you. The other element of the report, though, is just to follow on from our debate on Tuesday. And I was on a news broadcast yesterday morning, and I was reflecting on my upset that we weren't able to address the tree canopy cover, tree retention and tree planting on private land and the financial contributions for trees. But, you know, as part of the process, because it was all bound up in the process. And after I'd finished the interview, I thought, well, maybe we can. And so I approached the council staff, and they have worked really hard to come up with a method whereby which we could both incorporate it as a plan change arising from discussions with central government if they are successful, and if not available by that means to notify it as a standalone plan change. So this is an opportunity to vote positively for what our community want, which is for us to protect and build and grow our tree canopy cover and not to see it diminished by intensification. This would apply regardless of where the intensification or under which rules the intensification would occur. But as I've explained to some of you, notifying it as a standalone plan change takes it into the normal realm of an RMA amendment, which means it's subject to appeals, and it isn't a streamlined process as the Plan Change 14 would have enabled. So now the final thing that's been added very much at the last minute is because we've agreed to notify Plan Change 13, which is the heritage areas, we actually need to pull some of the elements from Plan Change 14 and build it into the proposal before we can notify it. So it's just a tidy up, authorising staff to make any changes to Plan Change 13 necessary to notify it separately from Plan Change 14. And staff have just picked that up over the last, last 3 days as an issue and have brought it to our attention. It seems to me that this is a nice, easy way of resolving it. So I'm happy to move my report, and I already had Tim signal that he wanted to second it, but yeah, which okay, seconded by Sarah. So I'll open it up for questions. Are there any questions? Is there any debate?
Yep.
Pauline.
Yeah, I want to congratulate you for a brilliant, really interesting report, Leanne, particularly the summit in Singapore that you attended. And I just would like to take the opportunity, if I may, on page 14, where you talk about the storm retention basins that we continue to invest in Christchurch, and just give a little bit of an update on a site visit that a few councillors, Melanie Coker, Ian Galloway, Tim Scandrett and myself attended yesterday out at the Eastman Sutherland Hoonhay wetlands. Now, this was a pre-opening site visit. It was a kind of an initial opening. There's going to be an official opening in October, November, and it would have been lovely to have had more councillors there. I know we're really busy, but the staff are incredibly proud of the work that they've done here. It's a huge project, 109 hectares, and the part that we went to, the Tikura, was 20% of the total project that they have almost completed. So it's just going to be an amazing facility with multi-benefits for the whole of Christchurch. So it'll actually improve our water quality. It'll filter the water before it goes into the Cashmere stream and onto the Heathcote. It involves flood protection by detaining the water in a rain event. And within that, it's all landscape planted it's going to have 3 kilometres of walkways. It's going to have, I think, 3 to 15 kilometres, and 3 to 5 bridges are going in there. There's going to be over 1,000 canopy trees to be planted amongst the other plantings they've already done. And it's all done around the 6 values that you mentioned, the Leanne: drainage, heritage, ecology, environment, culture and recreation is the way that our teams, our staff are embracing water quality, and anything to do with water now involves these 6 values. They've worked very closely with iwi as well to get everything right. I found a few other species. I think they talked about some mussels, native mussels that they've found, and freshwater crays. It's just fascinating. So I really want to give a huge heads up to staff, Peter Christensen, Keith Davison and the rest of the team, once again demonstrating the incredible innovation and vision and talent that we have in this organisation to be giving us these multifaceted, multi-benefit facilities in Christchurch. So I just wanted to chuck that in there, Leanne, and say what a great, and encourage people to go out there and see it and walk around there. Yeah. Geez.
I couldn't make it to the opening, but could you? Do you want to add a note, sort of, and perhaps you could put it in as number 2, off the back of the report, because it refers specifically to the issue of stormwater in the context of the submission we made on the Water Services Entities Bill, to congratulate staff on what if you think of the wording, you and perhaps Tim together come up with some wording for that. Is that all right? Yep. Sarah.
Thanks. I'd just like to acknowledge that it's your last mayoral report. And
Well, it's not actually. I'm doing one more.
Oh, are you? No, not on the last day. Yes. And but the breadth of stuff that's in here is just enormous. So there's 30 things in there in the last month on top of council meetings, and the range of things from the diplomatic stuff, meeting with the British Trade Secretary, through to the school students at Te Aratai, which was amazing. Huge range of things, a lot of public speaking events, and representing not only the council within the city, but actually representing the city internationally, and the conversations that you have there that benefit our city in the most amazing way. And you always put the city first in all of those conversations, and put politics aside. And it's enormously challenging work, and you do it with grace and dedication every single time, and clearly really comfortable with a wide range of audiences, and it really shows. So thank you for that. I'd also like to acknowledge the tree stuff coming through. Thank you for doing that. It's been a challenging few days, but to be able to try and salvage some tree protections with 20% canopy cover, even if it'll be potentially through a different process, will hopefully retain some of those protections, or put more protections and incentives in place for tree retention on the private land throughout the city. So thank you for doing that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sam and Melanie.
Yeah, look, I tend to agree with Sarah. So it might be one of those weird days for council. Yeah. No, look, again, just to acknowledge, I think that the tree stuff as well, because I think there was certainly an intent around the council table on Tuesday to achieve that. But quite rightly, people were frustrated at what's been pushed on by government. So just obviously using your experience to come up with that, I think is a really good win for the city. So it's one of those occasions where, having been in Parliament, being a lawyer, and now being the mayor has paid off really well. So thanks.
Thank you. Melanie.
I was going to say the same thing as Sarah and Sam, just to thank you for coming up with this idea and putting it through in your report, because I'm really grateful for that.
Thank you. Anne.
Same. Thank you for always putting the city at the centre of your work, and just looking at the mayoral forum goals, I guess: sustainable environmental management, shared economic prosperity, better freight transport options, climate change mitigation and adaptation, 3 water services. Your work has meant that our city is well placed to be meeting those challenges, and that's your legacy. So thank you.
Thank you. It's very kind. Right, I'll put the motion. Oh, sorry, have we got the resolutions wording for those extra words? Yanni.
Thank you. Just to obviously applaud the efforts to protect our trees and to increase our tree canopy. So totally endorse the comments that have been made on that. But I also just wanted to acknowledge Dave Adamson's work, because, you know, I think it's a really good example. We have amazing staff at the council organisation who, even when they no longer work for us, still give back to the city in a variety of ways. And Dave Adamson was one of our really special staff that, you know, dedicated his life to working for council for the better of the city. But even after he's no longer working here, has committed to doing that. And I just wanted to just acknowledge that contribution, because I think it was a really touching thing in your report that I just wanted to highlight. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that with doing the report each month, it's difficult to choose which elements to highlight, but actually I did choose that one to highlight the fact that, you know, he worked here for 41 years. He loved every single day and all of the different roles that he played, but he still spent 200 and something hours doing a tapestry of our city's crest, you know, a coat of arms, and that will be displayed in the Mayor's Lounge. So it's a great gift, and this room was not designed for pictures. I'll leave you my portrait if you like. I can watch over you. No, just
We've got a
joking.
special place for that.
But anyway, look, thank you very much, and thank you for your kind comments as well. You know, I think that one of the things that I have always tried to do is take a broad-based, collaborative, problem-solving approach to challenges that we might have, and sometimes it pays off, and I feel like today that it has. So thank you very much. We've got extra wording here. Congratulate staff on the project Te Kuru, which is providing flood protection, environmental benefits and recreational facilities for Christchurch, and we recognise the vision and talent of council staff and iwi engagement. Yep, that's fantastic. So that's been moved and seconded. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much. Good. Good work. You said no to the resolution, the whole resolution. Sorry? Okay. Okay. No, it's all right. I don't mind. Sorry?
We'll put your portrait up, he said.
Oh. Sometimes I just can't be bothered. Can I move on to the Godley Quay traffic and roading improvements? Andrew, would you like to move this?
Yes, I will. Yeah.
Is there a seconder for this? Aaron? Any questions? Any discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That is carried. The next one is 52 West Home Street, Strahan. Well, I was wondering if James wanted to. I always look to the ward councillor first. James? Yes, moved. Seconded by Sam. Put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That is carried. Thank you. External reporting and audit program for 2022 update, including valuations. Would you like to move this one? Yep. Seconded by Andrew. Yep. Any questions? Any discussion? Put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That is carried. Next item is item 11, Community Board delegations for new triennium. These are standard delegations. I'm happy to move those. Do I have a seconder? Tim Scandrett, put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That is carried. And the next standard item is the governance matters, also for delegations. I'll move that. Do I have a seconder for that? Tim Scandrett, put the motion. All those. Oh, Yanni.
Yeah, thank you. Just a question of staff. Was just around the exemptions for the excess water charges. Do staff have delegation to consider those at the moment as well?
I don't have the answer to that now, but I will
Right.
come back to you right now.
Okay. Yeah, it was just following the article in the paper. I just wanted to make sure that there was sufficient delegation to staff to address those. Thank you.
Can that be resolved by way of just a circulation?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. That's carried. Next item on the agenda is the appointment of proxy and alternate vote at Christchurch NZ Holdings. Happy to move Sam McDonald, seconded by Tim Scandrett. Put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That is carried. The amendment, again, technical amendment to the Strengthening Communities Funding resolution that was previously passed, has an error in it, just to tidy that up.
Happy to move.
Happy to move Jani Johansson, seconded Mike Davidson. Put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. And the next one is the Central City biannual report. I think John Meeker is going to come forward. I was quite keen for the staff to present just an update on where things have got to. Thank you.
Thank you. I've not prepared any slides, but I guess the main headlines from the first half of the year really were that the period was heavily affected by COVID-19, which impacted on events, central city spending and issues like that. On the more positive side, the opening of Te Pai was a big step forward for the central city, and making a decision around the arena to Koha was equally as important. In terms of the state of progress in the central city, the very low levels of vacancy at the moment is a really positive thing, and that's starting to stimulate new development. And perhaps picking up from the rebound from COVID, following the same outcomes from previous lockdowns, spending has been up in each of the last Junes over the last 5 years. So, that things are returning to some degree of normality after a particularly hard period that the trade has had. And then probably the final part, really drawing out some results from the Life in Christchurch survey. There continues to be positive sentiment about the progress of the central city, but there are still, I suppose, one area of concern remains that there is still some concern about safety, particularly after dark. That's probably all I've got to say. Any questions?
Thank you. I think there's a bit of a protest happening outside, but I don't think it's in relation to this report. I don't know yet. So, Tim.
Thank you. John, the recent email we got, excuse me, from Annabelle with regards to CCBA, how can we kind of close that circle? Is the circle closed? It seems we've discussed a couple of things, and our connection with the CCBA isn't quite there. So is this the right place to ask that, or is it something that or you could just... So we made a discussion with regards to the Central City Shuttle, and so the CCBA said that they actually hadn't been discussed with them prior to the decision being made. So is this the right format to say, how can we ask you to look into how we can close that circle? Is this the right format?
Sitting on the board and attending the board every month, I can be feeding those in. It's important, obviously, that we get the opportunity to be aware of these issues as they come up, but that's something that we'll work on as we go forward.
Thank you. So, if we can just feedback to us how we've closed that circle, that'd be great. Thank you very much, John. And thank you very much for the work you're doing. It's really important. Cheers.
Right. Thank you very much. So I'm happy to move that the report be received, seconded by Tim. Any debate? Yes, Sarah.
It's been really interesting. So the summer of 2019-2020, just as things were starting to rise around the world, people really thought that the city had turned a corner. The city was buzzing. People were like, "Oh, finally, Christchurch is back." That summer, and then a month later, COVID hit, and we went into lockdown, and so I think this summer will be back to that again, and things are looking really good. So it's really good to see. Thanks.
Thanks very much. And look, I'd just like to add to that, thank you very much for the work that your team's been doing. It's actually been really worthwhile having all of the reports to us, so that and also can I just say thank you for your calm and patient approaches to central city business owners, talking about, barrier sites to the regeneration of the central city, and the work that you've done with, what was referred to as the gravel pits, and the work that you've done there to make our city look better while it's still in transition. So thank you very much. It's something that I think you can be very proud of, and I'd like you to take the thanks of the council back to your team. Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you. Right, the Christchurch Wastewater Treatment Plant recovery update.
Do we want to? Keep going.
Now, I'm expecting you to do this to music, Helen.
See how we dance?
Gary may be able to sing, but I can assure you that I cannot.
I can assure you I cannot either.
All right, okay. Well, neither of you have to sing, but please, I'll let you take us through the update.
Thanks very much. And the report that's on the agenda in front of you does summarise the events since the fire of November 2021 and the work of the team across council and with our colleagues from the District Health Board, Community Public Health Unit, the Environment Canterbury, and a number of specialist consultants who have helped us since. So there's a lot in there, but we just want to cover off a few of the points today. So we'll go through the community support and social response because we have had a considerable impact on our neighbours in the residential area around the plant. An overview of the environmental monitoring and a bit of a picture of how that's trended since we began that monitoring work. An update on the interim operation of the plant. A look at the oxidation ponds, which are now the primary source of odours. A discussion about communication, and then noting when the next report will come through. So I hand across to Gary.
Good morning, everybody. I never like to read off a PowerPoint. So the stats are all there. As you can see, both of the application periods are over now, both in zone and out of zone. We've got sort of just under 20 to be picked up, but otherwise we've closed applications. So overall 3,081 applications came in for support. Referrals to Pegasus Health for the medical support have had 2 referrals, and both come from the Aranui area, one for skin and one for throat irritation. They were dealt with on the day that they came in, and the medical interviews were done, and that was sorted. The money that you put aside for community boards for funding, there's 4 referrals, and I use that loosely. There's 4 discussions going on at the moment around that community board money. As you can see, we've now supported 15 schools and 34 early learning centres to the cost of $278,000, and we have paid the invoice on that school education program so the kids can learn more about poo, which they were very keen to learn about, which is great. Happy to, do you want to do questions now or at the end?
We'll probably go through.
Carry on. Yeah.
Thank you. And I'll ask Nigel just to come up and have to brief us on the environmental monitoring. Where's he going?
Okay, hey, thanks very much for the opportunity for this. So from environmental monitoring for paint discoloration, we're at this stage we've been advising people that we're expecting the paint discoloration to fade once the hydrogen sulfide levels are steady and low, and we're moving towards that now. So at this stage we continue to engage with the people that we've been in communication with, and we'll also start to just to monitor on those people's properties whether we're seeing any signs of discoloration. So we'll provide advice to residents as to that progress, and also possible ways to clean up any remaining discoloration. and also locate contractors who can assist with clean-up and provide a... Yeah, so that's the contractors who can assist to clean up if there's people think that they want the discoloration to be removed more quickly and aren't capable of doing it themselves, and also a separate contractor building assessment firm that could assist us to provide assessment of any claims of damaged surfaces that remain after the discoloration is gone. And so
you've got this underway. This is what you're doing.
Yes.
So we don't need a resolution to this effect.
No.
You're already doing it. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yep. Sorry for interrupting.
No,
I've been
that's
trying
fine.
to monitor resolutions as well. So carry on.
Yeah. And so air sampling. So we're monitoring at residential sites. That's continuing. It's looking quite good. Just in the last few days, the levels at what you'd think the two key sites are Shorten Street and South Brighton are both low. And we're obviously continuing to post the results weekly on the website and notifying Community and Public Health and Environment Canterbury. And yeah, as I said, there at the moment, like generally levels of hydrogen sulphide are below the 0.03 level, and just at the moment over the last week they're probably mostly below the 0.01, so they're looking good. So that's Rudd's Road, which is a wee bit back from Shorten Street. That's giving you an indication that, and that's for the whole sampling period as well. So that you can see that begins right back on the 18th of June. So over time, I think if you just run an eye line across that we are seeing a decline in it, and the South Brighton.
Next one is Bromley School.
Oh, is it? Oh, sorry. And yes, for Bromley School, you can see, since we started to monitor there, it's remained below that level, and we see that because Bromley School's a wee bit further back. But overall, it's starting to look quite good. We're also, with the change in the weather, with spring coming, in the winter, the winds have tended to be from a southerly quarter, be it east or west, which is blowing in towards Bromley or Brighton. But with the summer coming, we're expecting to see the winds of a more northerly quarter and typically stronger for those who have to bike home into the northeaster will appreciate that. And so that stronger wind dissipates the gas more quickly as well. So overall, I think we're looking quite good just at the moment.
Thank you, Nigel. Just an update on the interim operations at the plant, and you'll be familiar with the conversion of 2 of our 4 clarifiers to aeration basins so that we can run an activated sludge plant. And that is essentially by the trickling filters. It's a great credit to our team, to the consultants who've designed this, and to the contractors who've built it, that in just 6 months they have built a plant that copes with the wastewater from a city the size of Christchurch, using the existing infrastructure on that plant. So that is a small miracle, actually. And the biology in that plant is now fully mature, and it's fully functional as of the end of August. What we're doing now, of course, is fine-tuning the operation of that plant so that we can further improve the quality of the wastewater going into the ponds. And you'll be pleased to know that the wastewater going into those ponds has much lower levels of suspended solids and organic matter, so the load on those ponds has reduced, and the ponds are responding with higher dissolved oxygen. In terms of that pond health, well, it's improving. We do have further improvement actions either underway or planned. So we've always taken an adaptive management approach to our interim operations, and we're always looking for ways that we can improve what we're doing. So at the moment we're optimising the operation of that activated sludge plant, and it was offline for about 8 hours earlier this month as we changed over the electrical control of that to improve that. We're also looking at increasing the capacity of the activated sludge process, and that's by converting another part of the plant that does primary sedimentation into an aeration basin also for activated sludge. So we're we're doing the design work for that at the moment. The improving of the flow balancing to the ponds. At the moment, we use 6 ponds in series. So the effluent goes from pond 1 through to 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And what we're looking at doing is putting in place a pipeline so that we can take wastewater directly to pond 4. So we'd then use 1 to 3 and 4, 5, and 6 in series and spread the load more on those ponds. And that's to take the pressure off pond 1, which we think will be the last one to improve. So that work is underway. We're also sourcing additional surface aerators for pond 1. At the moment, we've got 2 surface aerators on pond 1, and that helps support the pond by physically churning air and oxygen into the water. And we want to have more of those aerators in place before next winter. So winter is always the period when our ponds struggle with the increased load, and so we want to have those in place before next winter. And we're going to maintain our chemical dosing systems that are in place at the moment in standby mode over the next 2 to 3 years. So that is the work that's underway there. And communications. Thanks, Simon.
Kia ora koutou, Simon Maka, Toku Ingoa. So from a communications perspective, we're just continuing with what we've been doing really. So the website has continued to be updated once every or twice a week. That's with the new air monitoring results as they come in, or just information that comes to hand. We can put it in the news section. We're just making sure the information on there is relevant. We did a mail drop to 700 households in the Shortland Street area. That was from advice that we had received from Health New Zealand around some higher levels of hydrogen sulfide in the area, and predicted wind forecasts at the time. So we just put out some extra health messaging for those households. The pond health infographic that we have on the e-newsletter is we've managed to change a couple of them to orange. Thanks to the work that Helen and Adam Toos and the operational staff are doing out at the plant. So that was great to be able to do that this week. And just yesterday, we filmed a video with Canterbury Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Cheryl Brunton. So she just answered some health-related questions, and that'll be coming out probably later this week or early next.
Just to note that the next report on the wastewater treatment recovery will be to the insurance subcommittee, and that's obviously covering the insurance aspects of that. And we're happy to take questions.
Thank you. Yanni had a number of amendments, but I'm just trying to find a way forward with those. One is to request staff to update the council webpage to show the trend data of pond health to show progress towards reducing the odour levels to a level that is not offensive and objectionable. And I guess that it doesn't sound like a very unreasonable suggestion, because you've got an end point, and then where are we on that trajectory to get to that end point? Is that possible to do that?
Yes, so at the moment we have an infographic which turns the ponds are red when they're not functioning well, orange when they're starting to improve, and green when they're robust and in good health. The information behind that is the levels of dissolved oxygen, and we want those to be high, and the levels of biological oxygen demand, and we want those to be low. And we have some thresholds for those. So yes, what we're doing is having a look at putting up the graphs of the dissolved oxygen and the biological oxygen demand, and putting them up as a rolling average. So we take out the variations that disguise the trends, if you like. So we do have staff working on that, and yes, we will do that.
Because I think that, what does good look like at the end, and showing the journey of getting to good. I think that's quite a good infographic to have. I understand red, orange and green, but sometimes traffic lights aren't the best way to show where you're up to on a journey, because you don't know how long it's been orange for, you don't know how long it's been red for. So I think people take more of a comfort if they know that they're at the end of orange and it's about to go green, or vice versa. Anyway, it's that I thank you for taking that on. So that one's we'll include that as a resolution so that that's resolved. The second one is around the reporting to the incoming council on the scope and timetable to commission external independent review into the response to the Christchurch wastewater treatment plant fire, and that's both the the detailed engineering response, fire response, emergency response, and then subsequently the social response, and possibly more around the social response. But I think that's a useful piece of work to be doing at the end of a process, which is why I've suggested that be a report to the incoming council, because it's the idea is that, I mean, we standardise doing these reports with the Port Hills fire, I think it was, so that we were always embedding lessons learned into practice, because lessons aren't really learned unless they're embedded into practice, and picking up those communication requirements in a crisis situation. So I'm quite comfortable that we just note that staff will provide that report to the incoming council. But I think I'd rather just leave it at that, Yanni. I know that you want to have, this community group and various others feeding into it, but we're going to have to leave that to the next council to determine what the process is going to be. The scope and the timetable for that is not going to be set under this council.
Concern is that on July 28th, the CE was asked to advise on the scope and timetable to commission an external independent review into the response, and we've still heard nothing.
Yes, but Yanni, you've just heard me explain that it will not happen until the process is at an end. It is not at an end.
Sorry, I think there's two different things. There's the actual review itself, which I totally appreciate, the point that you're making, but I think for the community, not have any visibility over what we're doing in regards to the external review. Neither do we as the councillors who have dealt with this issue for a year.
It won't be determined by this council. It will not be.
It should be.
The scope. No, it shouldn't. We haven't come to the end of the process that we've got at the moment. It is an independent external review of what happened. What's happening at the moment is part of that.
Sorry, just to be clear. So you don't think this council that's dealt with for the last 12 months, this fire, should have advice on the scope and timetable of commissioning an external independent review?
No, because it's not going to happen in my time on this council.
Well, I totally disagree. For those of us who have been actively involved in this.
So if I'm happy for those recommendations to be added, but if you want to propose an alternative, then you can seek to amend them.
Are staff able to give? I mean, I didn't know the CEO wasn't going to be here today till we got
Yanni,
that email.
We all had advice that she
can
was
I
on.
just reinforce, there is no way that an independent review could be commissioned and completed in this term of council.
Sorry, I'm not saying that. We're talking about two different
If I could
things.
just finish. If there's because it won't be commissioned and finished for that time, it is right that the new council who will be receiving it and the recommendation has input into the scope and actually drives the scope of that. So we can actually ask councillors' advice of any suggestions in developing the terms of reference via email, but actually the acceptance of it will need to be by the new council.
So, sorry, my understanding around process, because I appreciate what you're saying, is the chief executive has said to us that there was an external independent review being commissioned, and that she would advise on the scope and timetable to us, and that was on, I think, before July 28th, but we also had a recorded resolution from this council on July 28th. I don't even know where that process is at. I presume that there's been work already started on that external independent review.
No, there hasn't.
In terms of scope and timetable?
No.
So we can certainly send out an email advising you on the timetable and the broad scope of it, but the actual formal terms of reference and the commissioning of it haven't.
And it wasn't my understanding that the CEO was going to bring it back to us for formal sign-off. It was that she was going to seek feedback from us. So, but I think it's important that the community reference group also be acknowledged as having the opportunity to provide input and feedback to that. And I don't know why the harm would be in doing that. What the harm would be in doing that.
I just think that if the organisation wants to seek that, I mean, literally we're 3 weeks from the council's election. So I just think that if the organisation wants to seek advice ahead of the election on ideas from the community representatives on that group, well then that's fine. Independently, the councillors around the table.
So could we have that recorded or noted?
We don't need to have it noted. The noting is that there will be an update provided to the incoming council. Chief Executive's taken it as an action. So the acting Chief Executive's taken it as an action.
Okay.
Are there any questions for staff? Phil.
I've got some questions.
Sorry. I called Phil, and then I'll call you, Celeste, and then Anne.
Okay, thanks, Helen. That's great. If I picked up on the pond graphic, if we actually had that, and because I can't find it unless it's here, are any of them starting to go orange? You know, we had.
Yes, 2 of them are orange.
Oh,
so ponds 5 and 6.
Sorry, I couldn't see that on there.
Yes.
And the pipe that you're talking about to bypass 1, 2, and 3 or whatever, can you send me a wee picture of, so I know in my head where that pipe's going?
Certainly.
Thank you. And the other day we were talking about the wastewater treatment plant injects oxygen, injects air underneath somehow into the system. It must pump it in underneath. Have we thought about putting pure oxygen in there? Because it seems to be that oxygen is what fixes the odour better than anything else.
You mean oxygen into the ponds, sorry? Or
No, somewhere in the system, I was talking to someone.
In the activated sludge plant, yes, there are pumps in there, and that's fully aerated. And you'll see from the photographs that we've shown,
yes,
you can see how that's being churned
yes,
and aerated.
But I was under the impression that somewhere underneath those tanks we inject air and it bubbles up through it, or am I mistaken?
It's just the pumps churning.
That's all it is. So we haven't got the capacity to actually put oxygen in.
It's fully oxygenated, so it won't help to add more. So there's enough oxygen there for the residence time in the aeration basin, and then it passes into the clarifiers. We do have the ability to add hydrogen peroxide to the wastewater discharge going from the clarifiers to the ponds, if we require it.
What I'm getting at is, instead of using air, which has oxygen in it, are we better to somehow put pure oxygen in there?
We don't need to.
Won't help.
No.
Okay, thank you. That's cool.
Celeste?
I just want to pick up on Yanni's earlier comments. The advisory group might not still be running post-election. They've been meeting weekly, and they're all volunteers giving up their time for this purpose. And I'm concerned that there is no way that we're providing them any visibility on this external review. There is no expectation, of course, that it would be completed, but we, the CE confirmed that that advisory group would be involved and also have an update as of this week, and that hasn't happened. So I just want to sort of express my concern that from a sort of perception point of view, this will not look good, because this was the part of the sort of tail end of the process that people feel like will contribute to a restoration of trust. So putting this off to the next sort of election period, I don't think is appropriate. The second point I wanted to make is about the amendment that was on the screen before. Can the advisory group be included in that? Was it a noting provision or the amendment that was up on the screen before?
Can I just give some feedback on regards to that question? So
can we just go back to that slide so I can see it when we're talking about it?
So just So just following on from the comments that the Mayor and Mary has said about the independent review. So the independent review, in terms of references, getting run by the head of assurance and risk, who's currently on leave. In regards to the community working group, it was a communications group. There's my understanding there was actually only 4 active members of that, because don't forget the elected members and board members are observers to that board. So we absolutely, there will be a community voice as part of the review. It is absolutely fundamental to it. However, asking for them to have feedback, and they can feed back into it as we're doing that, but at this stage we do not have something to share with them.
Can I just respond to that? The community advisory group isn't a communications group. We made that clear in the resolution, which was put forward in follow-up correspondence with staff, which, when the terms of reference were put forward, it referred to it as a communications advisory group, which was incorrect, and that has since been addressed. So for that to be used as a reason to not then have input, then validates the concerns that were raised at the outset.
Is there any reason why we couldn't write to the 4 community members on that and ask them for some feedback on informing the future review? Would that get
that's
across
fine.
that?
Happy with that.
Thanks. I've got Anne and then Tim.
In terms of feedback from the community, this is probably for Gary, have you had much positive feedback from people in terms of what they've experienced and in terms of their response?
So we have had a lot of positive feedback. We've had a lot of positive feedback around the comms, which improved very quickly when the issue was brought up. I think I've sat at this table before and said I've had hundreds of conversations with people, and I, hand on heart, can say that 95% of those have been grateful for what's going on. There'll always be issues. This community has been through, many strifes, if that's such a phrasing, in the last 10 years. This was the straw that broke the camel's back. However, I do believe that it's a strong community. We just need to be proactive and supportive as much as we can be. But there'll be people listening to this who are very, have made some comments that haven't been so positive. But in the question you're asking me, I've had a lot of positive feedback.
And a second question is, has this experience brought the community together in terms of, getting an identity for itself and a voice in terms of action in its own community and getting things done?
We'll probably have to ask the community that, but one example I'd give is that as we use the Bromley Community Centre as a safe place, originally a few people identified that. The number of people that have come in, and the group were concerned that the Bromley tag would affect rentals and everything. The number of people who've come in and said, I didn't know this was here, the bookings have gone up. I think as a community they meet a lot more often. They've got, there's food days now. I was going to join a Zumba class, but I was working. No, I wasn't going to join it, but it was on. There's lots of things going on. So it is an exciting community. Has it improved it? More people know about more things.
Thank you. That's excellent feedback. Tim?
Yeah, it's good that we get and concentrate on the positives, isn't it? So just saying. Just with regards to the odour issues, so really we've only had 2 to 3 spikes over the last couple of months. Would that be right? And they only last a day or so each?
So I've just put up the Rudds Road trend again, because Rudds Road is the longest single place where we have had a monitor. So yes, you can see that we get spikes now. Remembering that the Rudds Road is affected in the easterly, which is not quite the prevailing wind, but it's about 50% of the time. And you can see, yes, that for any one group of residents, you do get periods where the levels spike, and then they get a break when the wind blows the other way. and also see that it's coming down over time. So even when they're getting the wind, the prevailing wind, or the wind is coming their way, the amount of hydrogen sulfide and other odours, so hydrogen sulfide, remember, is an indicator of the odours, is reducing over time.
So so as we move forward, so the last 2 months, it looks like there's only been one. So
yes, and there was a big break in the middle with the
Absolutely.
upside of all of that rain in July was that it flushed the ponds.
And with so my understanding from your earlier info, as we've listened to it, is around 17 degrees as a day temperature and above is ideal. That's really what we want. And with if you're looking at the Met Service and as we move forward into summer, also the wind, as you've mentioned, but also the sun. So as we're going to go into the warmer temperature climate of spring and summer, then that's really going to affect.
Yes, so the improvements in the wastewater treatment process and the improving weather will both improve the quality of the water in the ponds.
Right,
Yes.
so that, and obviously that will reduce to almost nil the issues with smell, etc.
Agreed. Yes.
Great, thank you very much. Cheers.
Celeste, did you have another question, or is your hand just still up?
Oh yes, I had a question around questions for Gary around what was raised at the advisory group. There were some questions that had been asked and they were going to be reported back on at this meeting, but I haven't had an update on those yet.
Can you be specific on which ones, Councillor? There was a few.
Yes, probably all of the questions that were raised because they were going to be brought up. Do you have an update on any of the questions that were asked at that meeting?
Yeah. So yep. So I've spent the last day and a half doing quite a lot of research on this one. So air purifiers, we had a request to investigate making air purifiers available. Supply chain issues there is a limit to the number of air purifiers that we can access quickly, and cost is a very considerable factor in this. However, I have received 3 quotes on 3 different air purifiers, looking at a purchase of 100 air purifiers. They start at 20,000 and that ends at 50,000, depending on the model. If council was to agree to do that, then we would look at criteria on health, and I would need to talk to our health partners around how we could deliver that. Some of the things I'd like you to consider, however, is before making this decision, we need to consider how much longer we can expect the smells will be. While it's likely some odours will remain for most of September, they will progressively reduce as the time goes on with warmer weather. As well as warmer weather, we're also going to see a shift in the prevailing winds, as we've talked about. Spring traditionally brings stronger winds, so there'll be more days when we experience higher winds, speeds 12 knots and above, and so the odour will move on quicker. While ultimately we're at the mercy of the elements, we're reasonably confident that in the next 4 to 6 weeks hydrogen sulfide levels and therefore the odour will have dropped. I cannot tell you how effective these 3 air purifiers are, so I can't give you any information on that. We haven't been able to do any testing or whatever. So really, and the other thing was you talked about there was a request around loaning or buying. If we were to loan air purifiers, we would end up with purifiers at the end. Very labour intensive, very financially intensive. So if you were to do it, I would suggest it's purchase. I have worked on the basis of a group of 300 houses being the most affected, and have taken that maybe 1 in 3 would be affected. That's how I got the 100. But that's where that one sits at the moment. That's what we've been able to do in the time.
Yeah, no, that just sort of sounds like sort of a memo back, but that's not a report to council. It's too much information. I mean, I'm not criticising you, but it's not a matter that we can determine today.
No, and the request was 36 hours ago, so
yeah, no. And I'm sorry if I'd known that was the request, I would have said. No, that's not a request for responding to at this meeting. It's a request for, consideration on a broader basis. But it won't be a matter brought before this council. Today is the last meeting for decisions. So,
the other question, Gary, was around the Prezi cards and the remainder of the funding and how that might be allocated.
Yeah. So I've done a manual calculation. We have approximately 440 cards left. Staff have done some conversation about looking at the moving into the cleanup or the house cleanup and other things. We feel confident those cards can be used within this process going forward.
Yeah, so thank you. That's, I mean, again, I think that it's useful update, but it's not a decision-making meeting in that regard. So thank you. Was there anything else, Celeste?
Just the final question: is there an opportunity for the members of the community advisory group, and there's more than 4, but it's quite a big time commitment, so not everyone can make it, to report back on their views, because I think it's important that we hear from the community itself, and that's their role to be that liaison between the community and elected members and staff. Otherwise, there's a risk that we're sort of giving our views on what they think, when really they should be speaking to the issue themselves.
I think that we've just had an agreement from staff that they will, and yes, whether it's 4 or whatever the number is, staff will in fact seek the views of the advisory group members separately from the councillor members or observers at that, so that they can feed into the review, which is entirely appropriate, but that will go to the incoming council. This is the last meeting for decision making today. So, Yanni.
Thank you. So I just wanted to clarify a few things, because the request for air purifiers has actually been made months and months and months and months ago.
Yanni, this is not a decision making. This is not a decision making meeting in that regard. So can you please just focus the questions on the matters that have been brought to us today, please?
Right. So the question around reporting back from July 28th, what's happening in regards to those 2 resolutions? Like, when is that report coming back? No, we haven't. Okay, do you want me to quote the resolutions?
No. We've already heard from staff that they are already working on a clean-up request on houses discoloured from the fire. That let me just clarify that one, because what I heard was quite different than our request. What I heard staff say was that they were working on a clean-up service for those that were unable to clean up. But what the council request was... They have also said they're going to monitor when it simply disappears of its own right.
Sorry, can I just finish? The resolution that we passed on the 28th of July requested staff report back on options to provide a free clean-up on request service for those houses discoloured from the Christchurch treatment plant fire. So that's quite different than people... And originally, as people will recall, the staff view was that we should only do it for people that were unable to clean up. We had a debate about it at the time and passed the according resolution that I've just read. So I just wanted to check, when is that report back on options coming back to council?
I'm just trying to get the slide back up there, because at the time that resolution was passed, this isn't the slide, at the time that the resolution was passed, it was unknown to councillors that in fact the discoloration will fade. So we have found out that advice since. However, there are some residents who wish to progress possible ways to clean up remaining discoloration. Some want to do it themselves and they want some advice on that. And others want assistance with clean-up and providing assessment of any damaged surfaces. And that's the advice that we've received today. So that is sufficient for the purposes of moving on.
That's not what we agreed, and we did actually know when we made that decision around the advice that it will fade in time. That was provided.
We didn't, not in July.
Yes, we did. On July 28th, when we considered it, it was absolutely, we were aware of that. So, but just so I'm clear, what you're saying is the report back today is closing that resolution that we've requested. Is that correct?
as far as I'm concerned, yes, if you want to raise it in the next council, then you can. But the reality is that staff seem to have this matter under control.
Okay. Can I just check on the, and thank you for the work. And I know Helen said that they're working towards that trend data, which is great for the pond health. And I know it's complicated. And it's really, really appreciated that you are doing work on that and we can try and get somewhere. But I just wanted to check the confidence around the end of September date, or what the kind of current date is where we do expect to get to, I guess, what you call the normal transitional arrangements, if there can be such a thing. And just whether we can show, like, as well as the pond health, but just to kind of have that target date where we will get into the kind of normal runnings in terms of the transitional plant.
Certainly. So one of the things that we can show is we always monitor dissolved oxygen in our ponds. So we can run a 12-month rolling dissolved oxygen level to demonstrate how the ponds change seasonally and with time. And that'll demonstrate when we come back into sort of normal operation, if you like.
Yeah, but the expectation that people had about mid-September, which has now sort of got to the...
So if you have a look at the Rudds Road one, which is why we chose this long-term trend, you can see that things are trending down.
Yeah.
And the levels over the last couple of weeks have been very low indeed. So the ponds are performing better already.
Yeah, no, sorry.
And we expect that to continue.
I understand that, but the kind of public perception was that by the middle of September we would expect to see, significant improvement. And
Yes.
then I think we got an update maybe about 2 or 3 weeks ago that said, we've had some adverse weather. Things are going to take a bit longer.
Honey, I have to move on to the next item on the agenda. It is 11:04. I already said that I was going to adjourn the meeting. Look, if you're the only one that has these outstanding questions, everyone's looking the other way now. But, if there is an opportunity to perhaps assist Councillor Johansson.
It's not just me.
Certainly, we will put better information on the ponds on the website.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you
Sorry,
very
it wasn't
much.
just about the
All right.
ponds, it's the overall thing.
So we've got the resolutions in front of us. Would someone like to move those? Tim, seconded by Melanie. Is there any discussion? Yanni?
Yeah. I want to acknowledge the work that staff have been doing on this, what is really complex and complicated response, particularly around the pond health and getting the plant running to a state where it will reduce the offensive and objectionable odours that people are doing. But I think what's really important is that when we as a council pass resolutions, we do get the reports back to honour the intent of what's been requested. And I know one of the frustrations, I think, from the situation is that things seem to take longer and longer, and then things seem to get lost over time in terms of the importance. I think the external independent review, it's absolutely critical that work starts as soon as possible. The longer we leave it, the less information I think that we can get that will be relevant because of the passage of time and memory. So I can't understand why we haven't already started that external independent review. I think it's incredibly important that we try and restore confidence and trust in our local communities that have been impacted the worst by this. And one of those ways is to make sure that we do learn as many lessons as possible about what hasn't been done well as the things that have actually worked well. So, I'm really disappointed that we're waiting for the new incoming council around that external independent review. I would have hoped since the 28th of July that it would have been in progress by now and people could see that there was a scope and a time frame for it.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. And there is an item I'd like to, where is it? Nominate Sam McDonald to chair the item 25. What? Item 25. Is that in PX?
Advise which agenda it's on as well, because it's...
Where is it?
Is it the proxy one there?
I've just got it on screen now.
It's not.
It's 25.
It's 25. So what page
Yeah.
is it on? 9. Oh, page 9.
Right, so I'll move Sam. Do I have a seconder for Sam? Pauline, put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Sam, you chair the meeting for the election of proxy and alternate.
So Mike's happy to move it. Tim's happy to second it. Any questions? All in favour? Against? Carried.
Thank you. I shall resume the chair, and I'll now move that we go into PX and that Alex is going to remain for the element on the agenda that he has knowledge of. Seconded by Sam. Put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. We are adjourned until 11:15. No, sorry. 11:20 for councillors. That's enough time to grab a quick coffee. And we'll be back into the public session at 12 o'clock. Thank you. And, oh yeah, you're going to. I can't even remember where we got to.
Yeah, fan clubs.
Fan club of 0.
So we didn't. We got to still do.
On the port, so page 7.
Okay, Lynette, we've got the major cycleway Rapanui Shag Rock section 3 speed reduction and detailed traffic resolutions. Can I divide it into 2? We've just had a message through from one of the community board members, and it follows on from what Yanni raised. Has anyone got any questions on the detailed traffic resolutions? Because these are the stock standard generic reports that happen at the end of a very long and significant process. So that's all good. Okay, now I'll move on to the speed reduction. Could you just give us some advice on that, please?
I can. So the original report that was approved back in 2017 requested that staff, as part of the process, look at reviewing the speed limits on Humphreys Drive. The speed limit on Tidal View was completed as part of the design of the process for the cycleway. It's a little bit of greenway along there. So these were consulted on, and we are reporting back on that. These are being done as part of an MCR process. Now, I am aware of the email that's come through, and that this has not been taken back to the community board. So, and I believe also from staff's perspective, there's been some conflicting advice, and I apologise to both the community board and the council for that. This is an MCR process, and it was being done as part of an MCR, and as a metropolitan project, this would come back to council for a decision. The speed limit would come back to council for a decision as well. Being done jointly with other projects, it usually follows a community board process when it's just on its own. It's a little bit different with the MCR process. So we should have briefed the community board, and we haven't. My suggestion would be that it won't change, we would need to brief the community board, but it would still come back to you for a decision. So,
so it's neither here nor there that it gets left over until after the election?
It's neither here nor there from my point of view, and he's not here yet. So, and I've talked to the project manager, and they're not particularly worried, but it would need to come back early to the new community board. It was here's Adrian. It was the feedback from the community was positive with regard to the speed limit reduction. The proposed speed limit reduction is from 70 to 60 on Humphreys Drive, which has very limited impact on vehicle traffic. And the 30 kilometres an hour on Tidal View was supported as well, strongly supported as part of the Greenway.
So, I mean, we've got a resolution. Well, not a resolution, but an email from one of the community board members saying that the process should be paused until the community board, as promised, has been updated. It's a shame because they had a meeting last night, didn't they?
Yes.
It's the last meeting ever for that community board. Yeah.
The community board doesn't exist anymore.
No.
After this council, what happens then?
would go to Coastal Burwood, Linwood.
Coastal
No.
Burwood, Linwood.
They'll go to Waihai.
Was it?
They'll go to what?
No, isn't Humphreys Drive still?
Coastal Burwood, Linwood.
Right.
Humphreys
Is it
Drive, I
Linwood?
think, is still.
It'll either go
Mine.
to Waihai, Coastal Burwood, Linwood, or it'll go to
Heathcote, Braden, and Cashmere. The problem would be as if it was going to go to two different boards because of the intersection at Albans and stuff. We just check the maps.
Yeah, this is.
The speed limit is only Humphreys Drive and Tidal View, so that would only go to one board. So if you were going to leave anything, just leave the speed limits, which is item 20.
I'm just wondering whether, a practical solution is just to acknowledge that it should have gone to the community board last night, acknowledge that the community board comes to an end at the election, so it's still actually alive at the moment, send a notification to the community board with all of the details that would have been included in a briefing.
Yes.
Invite any community board members to ask any questions that they might have.
Yeah.
But just approve the speed limit change on the basis of the advice that we've received. I mean, it just seems to me a practical solution rather than starting a new community board, getting it all set up, having a different community board, and in fact the community board member who's raised it does not represent the ward where it will end up being decided. No, after the election he won't. Is it?
Yeah, I think it is, because the speed limit is in Heathcote, I think.
Right. No. It's only a briefing. It's not a decision.
And that is what has caused, through the chair, that is what has caused the confusion, is our area engineer, who would normally go directly back, ran it on our behalf, but hadn't caught up with the MCR process. So
Right.
there was confusion, and I would like to note staff's sincere apologies to the board that we didn't follow that process.
Right. So it's been a genuine oversight, and so that the question in front of us really is, can we just simply resolve it with a round robin, ask them to, if they've got any questions, that they can follow it up with a staff member?
Yes, we can do that. We will do that. And if there is anything that needs to be followed up with another report to the appropriate board or some changes made, then we can do that following that process.
I'm happy to move, Leanne, with
Yep.
your addition. So.
Aaron? Yep. Seconded by Tim. Yanni?
Question of staff. Just in terms of on the page 157, there's not any sort of works happening on that page, as I understand, other than just temporary signage and markings.
Bear with me a second.
Is that correct?
157.
Page 157 of the report.
Yeah, that's just signage. There's no physical.
Can you tell me what who the page numbers on?
It's basically the intersection of Dyers and Linwood Ave.
No, there's no work happening there. That's already done.
Right. And as part of the work, there's been
That's just speed limit changes.
there's been an issue further along Linwood Ave that I've put in quite a few times. Just wondering.
Which way along Linwood Ave? Towards Eastgate.
Towards Eastgate, around the holiday park.
That's really not covered under this.
No, can I just finish? I appreciate that it's not in the scope of this work, but if there was an ability to address some of the issues that have been raised as part of the contract, is that able to be considered?
If you have issues relating to any works around the city, you need to put them through the office of the CA.
I've done that about 3 times and still not had a response, and have been trying to follow it up for months. So even though it's a sensible thing to do, just to make a fix.
Have you diverted to another part of the route?
The question was around if there's an ability to extend the contract, to modify the contract slightly.
These are the detailed traffic resolutions. We've done that, and this is the discussion that we've been having on the speed limit. It's been moved and seconded.
I will look up that issue. I don't recall it. So.
All right. Any debate? Put the motion. Aaron?
Just quickly, as someone who's not always a fan to reduce speed limits, this one makes absolutely perfect sense, and the design down there is I think really good. I think this is going to be a tourist attraction. Big numbers are going to be going. Big numbers are going to go through here on bikes and other cool stuff, roller skates, scooters, all sorts of things. It's going to become a real hub. So all the changes here are great. And I think when I was a kid living down the road there, it was 100k an hour down that end of Linwood Ave, and only the odd car ended up in the estuary, but there was the odd one.
Sarah.
Thanks. I'd like to thank staff for all their work on this. I know that the original design around here was going to be a more heavily engineered one out into the estuary, and it was good a couple of years ago when we managed to shift that because it was going to have those environmental impacts, and we shifted it to make it a lower engineered, low cost version through Charlesworth Reserve, which was absolutely fantastic and one that is shovel-ready funded by central government. It would have cost us more money had we decided not to do it. So while I'm really glad that my colleague is now impressed with the work, I will note that 5 councillors voted against that change of route when we did that. Thanks.
Yanni?
Yeah, I won't be supporting this today. I'll be abstaining because I do believe it should go through the community board. I do appreciate the work that staff have done, but I do feel uncomfortable with this not going through the community board. And also just to acknowledge that I can't believe the hostility around trying to get what would be a sensible thing done to actually fix a problem for a small cost is seen as so problematic. It's also a real shame as part of this one that repeatedly there's been submissions to our LTP and annual plan around the Dyers road safety for cyclists, which is, pretty bad. It's on road with heavy vehicles, but we haven't been able to address that either, which I think is a real lost opportunity. But fundamentally, I do believe this should go through the community board before it comes to us, so I'll be abstaining from it today.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. And abstention recorded for Yanni Johansson. Thank you very much to the team. Hearings panel report to the council on the Mount Cavendish Reserve, proposed new lease to the Christchurch Gondola. Sarah Templeton, would you like to introduce this report?
Yeah. So the gondola has been around for some time now. Some changes to do with central government legislation has meant that the lease was up earlier than it would have been otherwise, and there were a small number of submissions, mostly in favour, and the hearings panel met to consider the submissions and any recommendations. Some things have changed in line with how leases have changed over time, including more emphasis on waste management and recycling diversion, those kind of things. And there were a couple of things that people raised that were out of scope. One of those was the time tunnel, and I know that Ngāti Wheke has been doing some work with the gondola management, and because we'd had some submissions on that and some concerns from people around the nature of that, we've asked for some regular updates, so quarterly updates there on the progress of the work there with Ngāti Wheke on the experience, on the visitor experience there, which I think will be really good to get that done. So it was relatively straightforward. Yeah.
And you'd like to move that?
Yep.
And do I have a seconder for that? Melanie? Any questions? Yanni?
Thanks. Did we consult with Mana Whenua before we advertised it?
So can I?
Yeah.
We have had conversation with Mana Whenua. Mana Whenua, if you see from the papers that were attached, Mana Whenua were clear that they did not feel the need for further consultation. But I also had a face-to-face conversation with a representative from Ngāti Wheke.
Sorry, so before it was advertised, we talked to Mana Whenua or not? I understand through the process we have. I was just wondering if we'd done that before we advertised.
So there was consultation first through our normal channels with MTT, and then there was actually direct conversations with Ngāti Wheke.
Yeah. So they
both
decided
at
not to be
and,
part of the consultation.
Elected level.
Thank you. I'll open it up for debate. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you. Engagement working group. Anne, your time has come.
Unbelievable. I know. How about that? So, give me a minute. No longer. So, yeah. I'll take. So we'll take it as read, the engagement report here. So we're all aware of the ongoing challenges and barriers that council faces trying to engage meaningfully with our residents, and we all know that what they are. So the focus of this group was not to kind of go over things again that we already know, but was to look at what we can do to overcome them. So specifically, the specific purpose was for the working group was to identify practical and tangible ways that we could increase participation, and particularly with a focus on the long-term plan, and also to support Te Whittingia Strengthening Communities Together strategy. We were tasked with producing a strategy for pre-engagement on the LTP, and that's what you will see as attachments in front of you. And this was a specific focus for this working group. So I guess successful engagement means right time, right message, right audience, but I also think I'd like to add right place, and you'll see a list of actions that are there that will be entered into. And I think we had some really good engagement with the multicultural advisory group. We had a really good engagement with young people, and they had some specific thoughts about what could work. And one of them was actually going to, for example, diverse communities and having food together and actually talking through some of the issues that they were concerned about, and also presenting the information that they needed so they could engage with the long-term plan. So I think that probably sums it up, and I would like to thank the staff for the work that they did, and also the other members of the engagement working group. It was practical, it was down to earth, and I think we got some tangible things that we can measure going forward. So thank you.
Thank you. So you're moving that?
I'll move that,
And
yes.
do I have a seconder for that? Tim? Any discussion? Sarah?
Can I just thank Anne for her work chairing that, and also Celeste for putting it forward as a project for us to do, as well as the work that staff have put in. One of the other things that we did around this was to actually look at some of the other communications that council does, and the responses to customer service requests and some of the stuff around that, and had some really good conversations with staff. And we know that there's some changes already coming through that they had been working on to make sure that the information going out to the community around the work that we're doing is in line with the actual work we're doing, because sometimes things were automatic and not quite lining up, and so some really good work happening in that space too.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you. Next one, emissions offsetting ETS application. Moved by Sarah, seconded by Pauline. Any questions? Any discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. I've never seen someone walk by. Thank you. Application for remission of development contributions, Canterbury Brain Collective and the Cancer Society. I'm happy to move that this be postponed by way of decision to enable staff to undertake the work. Seconded by Sam McDonald. Put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Next item, Otatahi Urban Guild Community Loan. Sam, you're happy to move that one?
I'll move it. I'm not happy to, but I will.
Right.
Move it. Yeah.
Yes. You're in the realistic position of having to face up to it. Yes. Right. And do I have a seconder for that? Phil, any questions? Any discussion?
I guess there is just one question.
Yeah.
It's probably more a John question. That's other John question. No. I guess yeah.
It's not you.
John, we've done your report.
Oh, have you?
It's been and gone.
No, I mean, I guess the only thing is, obviously at the time of the loan, we looked at how we could enable things, and there have been things that have transpired that meant that couldn't proceed. I guess I had some concerns around the intangible asset value that sits in there, but I mean, as we've talked about, it's in terms of being realistic, it's sort of gone. Just going forward, I guess the applicants or the people involved in that, will there be a waiting, or will there be some consideration in future funding applications or loans, reflective of how this one didn't work?
Yeah, this learning and this experience will be noted in our files, and in the when we assess the merits of any loan application according to the individual application and the merits of that or not at the time, this sort of information, including past histories, track records, when have endeavours such as this worked before, groups and individuals involved, is all taken into consideration.
Okay, thank you.
So there will be a process there to collect this information and to use it wisely into the future, Councillor.
And that's not a reflection on the council itself, because your initial advice was not to proceed, but we collectively want to take the punt. So, appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, happy to move.
Right, and I've got a seconder for it. Yanni.
Yeah, just a follow-up question, I guess, in terms of Councillor McDonald's question is, why is there an urgency to write it off now rather than waiting for a greater duration of time? That would mean that it was recorded and kept on the records, so that if there were other things, they would be considered.
A number of reasons for that. I can go into some, and Leah may add to the others. It's absolutely abundantly clear from our interrogation of the situation that the recipients of the loan cannot pay it off. The enterprise has been wound up. There are no assets that can be realised for monetary value that will allow the council to recover their costs. There's no ability whatsoever that we can find to repay the loan. Leah, would you like to?
And I was just, John said, and if there's no ability to recover this debt, we need to write it off. They're two completely different matters of what you were actually raised. That to keep the loan there, so that we've got some history, is not relevant for the point of view of actually writing off this debt. If it cannot be recovered, it needs to be written off. As John has indicated, that the applicants of this or any further applicants going forward, this will all be taken into account.
But my understanding is we do have a number of overdue debtors that are way outside this sort of time frame, like e.g. they've been a lot longer.
Time frame is only one attribute when you're considering whether debt can be repaid.
Yeah.
What we are saying to you is there is no ability for the council to recover this debt.
This was a community loan,
That's
and
right.
there were risks that were highlighted to us by staff at the time. In fact, the recommendation was not to approve the community loan. So it's just bringing us back to reality. Sam?
Yeah, just one final question. So just to be really clear, that if we didn't do it today, because there is no ability to recover it, our auditors would make it do us anyway, wouldn't they? If you take materiality out of it, they would consider it pretty bad practice to not reflect, or at least write down the provision come the end of the next financial year.
I can't comment on what the auditors would do, and
it's a pretty loaded question because I basically know the answer. So,
yeah. But as I said, my advice to you is that you need to write this up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Cool.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. I'll put that motion. Sorry? Oh, you want to speak to the motion?
Yeah,
Right, sorry.
just briefly, because I did support the initial motion for council, and you're right, Leanne, we were advised not to I think the loan was about 400,000 at that point. Sorry, 450. Yeah. So 180 of that. 183,600 to be not recoverable. So the thing is that it was a great opportunity, and I thought it was worth that risk to have a really sensitive community development there facing Latimer Square. That's not to be now, and I believe another property developer is doing something different there that's completely different than what the vision was, starting from that Breathe project, which was so exciting a few years ago. But, you know, we're in a position where we do have to take some gambles sometimes, informed ones, not reckless ones, and that's what I felt that I did at the time. It is sad that it hasn't proceeded, but that's the position we're in today. So I'll support writing off that today.
Sam?
Just really briefly, I mean, I share Pauline's sentiments, but the only reflection I'd make is that I recall at the time when we made it that, you know, the council did want to take a punt and see whether we could help enable that development to get something going. But what was really heartening was the protective mechanisms in the drawdown of the loan. So we've actually have protected, as opposed to transferring $450,000 on day one. This has been a staged process, and I think it's worth acknowledging John and Mary and the team for putting those protections in place, because this could have been a lot worse. But I think, still on balance, you know, it would have been good if this had proceeded, and you know, we do still want to be enabling. So I think those protections have actually helped the ratepayer. No one's happy about it, but in the end, I think, as Leah and that have pointed out, this would be written down regardless of whether we make the decision today or not. Purely from an accounting standards point of view, it's not recoverable, so we would be sitting something on the books that if we didn't do it, we'd be forced to anyway.
Yeah. Yanni?
Yeah, I mean, I think on reflection, what's a real shame about this is the inability for central government to work with us and get what was a exemplar or a showcase development that addresses the issues of housing affordability in our city. And, you know, it just seems so sort of strange that just essentially, you know, what should have been a real positive, because the government, for whatever reason, didn't want to work around the land being sold to this group within timeframes. My understanding from the time was that they'd asked for an extension. And, you know, if you reflect back with the property prices and market, you know, during COVID, at the start of COVID to where we are now, I'm sure there would have been demand for this sort of development in the central city. So it just seems like a bit of an own goal by central government as well in terms of trying to address the issue of housing affordability, because I thought this project was innovative in trying to do that, and it's a real shame that it didn't go ahead. And I think far bigger forces than what council could control were at play in terms of the ability for central government to make this land available for a exemplar, showcase, innovative housing development. And it is good that we're working through the Urban Growth Partnership around housing innovation. I don't know how many councillors have read the report that went to the GCP committee, but it is an excellent report with a number of resolutions and actions, or recommendations and actions, that talks about taking a holistic approach to addressing housing affordability. And this sort of project would fit really brilliantly in with what some of those recommendations are. So it was a shame to see this fall over, and I do believe, you know, probably with the advice from staff, that this is the correct thing to do, but it is still incredibly disappointing.
Yeah. Aaron?
Yeah, at the time I did take the advice of the staff and voted against, along with Anne and James Daniels, who's no longer here. And I felt really bad doing it at the time, because I personally thought it didn't stack up, but I loved the concept. And it's admirable that you talk about housing affordability, and we can talk about it till we're blue in the face, but the numbers have to match the dream. And in this project, they didn't. And I remember at the time visiting a studio unit 100 metres away on the park, and it was under $200,000. And so to be building something that would be over double that price, and that took months to sell. So it just made no sense. So it was a case of, as much as we'd love to have it, it fell over just like the Breathe ones did. Well, they took the wrong option. A local, Simon, who you know, designed a really great one for Breathe and didn't win. And they went with someone overseas who never delivered. It's been a dog of a site, unfortunately, and it's in one of the best positions. So sadly, it didn't come true. And I think I said at the time I wanted to be proven wrong.
So I was reflecting earlier on that one of the early benefits of becoming the mayor in 2013 was to stand at the award ceremony where the original project was announced. Kevin McLeod was one of the judges from Grand Designs, and it was actually quite an emotional occasion, because the people that won the competition, as it were, to develop the site were so excited about what it would mean for the city. I found a report on why the project failed, and I'll just read from it. The government was unwilling or unable to recognise that an insistence on a pure market approach would not deliver the innovative, sustainable village asked for in the competition brief, and failed to factor in the opportunity costs to government, local businesses and the wider Christchurch community of delaying by many years the residential development of the eastern side of the city. As a result, the early vision of the vitality that a thriving residential neighbourhood would bring to the city has not yet been realised. And that report, was sort of reflecting on the sort of emptiness of the site. Yes, it is being built now, but the opportunity, and I guess that's why I supported the funding going to the Otatahi Urban Guild, was just the hope that we could capture some of that, but it was not to be. And sometimes the financials that sit behind these projects are what stop them from becoming a reality. So I shall put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you. Heritage Incentive Grants. Moved by Aaron, seconded by Andrew. Any questions? Any discussion? Oh, yes, Aaron.
Yeah, fantastic report. Thanks again.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much. And now intangible heritage grants. Tim, seconded by Aaron. Any questions? Yanni.
Thank you. Just, I guess just wanted to check for number one that we've discussed the approach with Mana Whenua in terms of the grant and whether they're comfortable with what's been proposed.
Yes, this one has been something we've been working on for 2 years now. And we worked with Shane and Jay when they were both here at the time when the application first came in at a draft stage, and they were both hugely supportive. The other thing that I followed up following that question is that although the Arts Centre are the applicants, it's actually a Māori advisory committee that the Arts Centre have set up who will be administering and overseeing the grant and the projects it goes into. And that is an independent committee. It does include Purifiers, it includes 3 other Mana Whenua representatives who have been appointed by Ngāi Tahu as the appropriate people to sit within the Arts Centre. So there's definitely Mana Whenua are leading this project, and we've been working with them all the way through.
Thank you.
I shall, so we've got a mover and a seconder. Any debate? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you. Thank you very much. $250. Oh, yeah. They are.
There you go.
Yeah. They published a picture of my dad on one of the websites from this collection. Yeah. Anyway, so environmental partnerships fund distributions FY23. We've got my brain's not working. I know your name. Kate is here. Does someone want to move this? Moved by Sarah, seconded by Mike. Any questions? Yanni, so Kate, come to the table.
Thanks, Kate and Kay. I really appreciate all the work that you do with our environmental groups. And I know that there's a lot of demand on our rangers in terms of time and resources to enable a lot of the environmental groups in the city to contribute and get a lot of volunteers. Just the one very specific question I had was around the Avon Heathcote Ihuta Estuary Trust, around how much they'd applied for and how much they've been granted. And just sort of related to that, coming out of a community planting day that they had the other week, the desire for a sort of estuary-based ranger and whether there was any opportunity to look at that support through this money, like the discretionary money that's been held back, if there was a process to enable an estuary-based ranger to work in that space. Thank you.
I'm afraid that question's a bit above my pay grade, Yanni. In terms of, to answer your first question, they didn't apply for this money. The money's been allocated to them. So we have various partnerships and memoranda of understanding in place with many of these groups. And in the LTP, they had their funding reduced by 5%. And when this opportunity came up, we saw it as a chance to lift them back up to the level to which we were previously supporting them, to make sure that their momentum was maintained for doing climate change. As to the question of a ranger, I think my only comment on that would be that the community rangers that we've recently appointed as a result of the funding that we got in the LTP have been making great strides across the city and are really, really building their relationships. And I don't see the estuary as any different in that. I think that they're gradually taking hold of owning the relationships and holding the relationships with those community groups, and it's something that's only going to get stronger, and we're seeing a lot of increased activity because of those 3 new ranger positions. But I can't speak to getting a new ranger in place for the estuary. I think that's one for Andrew.
What would be the process for allocating that discretionary towards a project?
We want to hold it in reserve because and specifically through those community rangers, we are hearing all the time of new things that are coming up. So it's about us having our ears to the ground, and if there are new projects and new initiatives coming to the fore that we think would be worth supporting, that we would, through those rangers and through my team, be approaching those groups and talking to them about what they need.
So if the trust wrote a letter, for example, if they saw a need and a demand, then that would be something you could consider.
100%.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Just looking at these groups who are being approved funding today, hopefully, that they all rely on and have within them hundreds of volunteers. Is it possible for you, without being onerous, to monetise those voluntary hours and put that into the report?
Sure.
Because I think that for this $350,000 fund, the public would be gobsmacked to see what that actually turns into when we put our volunteers' hours in there.
I totally
and it also
agree.
recognises the people that step up and do this work with us and us with them.
Yeah.
So, is that
absolutely. I mean, through our Better Impact database that we collect volunteer data on, that's a fraction of what's happening across the city. So very small matter for us through the reporting mechanisms we have to ask them to provide us with the hours, and we can apply that to the cost of having a ranger or a PGMO on the ground doing the same sort of work and easily monetise that.
So, Leanne, would it be possible to put a noting provision in there that these reports do monetise the volunteer hours as well? Because I think going forward it's a great
sort of
public-facing information is really important. Thanks.
Agree.
For future reports. So ascribe value rather than monetize. I don't like the word money. you know, sort of to include a
voluntary hours.
the value of the contribution of voluntary hours.
Yeah.
Something.
Well, it's easy to monetise it though.
Well, that could be one way that we do it.
Yeah,
but
I
we
believe
also
it too,
talk
yeah.
about what's achieved as well as what.
Yeah, because it
financially
isn't just the financial
Oh, no,
contribution.
no, no.
It's how they, but it's also how they work together, and it's
Oh, and the
coming
social benefits
together.
as well.
Yeah, there's
And one of the lenses that we apply every year is to look at how many ranger hours are going into each of those planting projects. So for one ranger hour, generally speaking, you know, even in the smallest groups, we're getting 4 to 6 hours of labour and help, right up to 200 hours for things like the Big Give and other really big projects.
Yeah, and I think where I'm coming from is to show that this money, which is from the ratepayer pool, actually grows. We're growing that dollar value by heaps, and so if we can just encapsulate somehow.
yeah, no, that's good. And since I've got you here, this is the only chance I'll get to say thank you for all the work that you did around the peace train, and for making that such a valuable asset to the city straight away. And for arranging the weather on the first day that it had its public
I had
outing.
a word.
But no, thank you very much. And to the whole team, I saw Suresh last night, and he's so excited about being one of the volunteer train drivers. He said it's a childhood dream come true.
And that's the thing, you know, there's 40 people. I'm just doing the logistics.
Yeah.
This is working because 40 people have put their hands up and put their hands up for hours and hours of training and making themselves available. You know, volunteers make the world go round.
They do indeed, but sometimes they need a little bit of lubricant and coordination, and you're that person, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, I've got the resolution moved and seconded, so I'll put that motion. Oh.
I just wonder, given the thing that you've just said, whether we should just formally say thanks to the people that have offered to support the peace train.
This isn't about the peace train.
Okay.
I was very naughty,
Right.
and I interjected, and it was only because Kate was at the end of the table.
Okay, but could we thank the groups in here that are getting the grants for the work they do for our environment? Just acknowledge.
Yep. Okay, so that we extend thanks to the community groups or the environmental community groups who do so much for the city. Yep.
So the community groups involved in the environmental partnerships, their contribution to the city or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll think of that. Yeah, think of their words. Okay, I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried.
Thank you.
I'll mention the peace train in my final report.
Lovely, thanks.
Okay. Right, the private plan change 10 Meadowlands exemplar final approval. Someone like to move that? Sam, seconded by Tim. Are there any questions? Is there any debate? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. This is the last item before the lunch adjournment. Canterbury Museum redevelopment confirmation of funding. Somebody want to? Oh, we've got Brent Smith here. Would someone like to move this? Sam McDonald, seconded Andrew Turner. Are there any questions? Pauline.
Thank you. Just around resolution 2, the council will release the funding if the museum has raised the other funding, and then 3.1 says that they have. Am I correct there?
3.1 says they've had confirmation of some funding from central government. They still, at the briefing the other day, museum said they still had other significant fundraising to complete, mainly for the fit out.
Mainly for the fit
out.
Yeah. Oh, I see. So that's why they've taken that as a separate project. So they're pretty much there, but they still need a little bit more funding.
They need this release so that they can actually proceed and let the contract now.
Yep.
And the significant funding they got from central government that they told us about the other day will get them on their way as well.
Excellent, thank you.
Right. So that's been moved and seconded. I'll put that motion. Oh, sorry, Melanie.
I just wanted to say that I'm really impressed with point 4. The museum came to us and talked about how they got they had their plans in place and the budget was higher than the funds they have available, and they significantly de-scoped and, as it said, value engineered, and I was really impressed with that process and wish that actually council did that a bit more with some of our projects, but I congratulate them on the good efforts.
Yeah, I will put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. And I will now move that we exclude the public for the remaining item on the agenda for all the reasons set out on the agenda. Do I have a seconder for that? Pauline Cotter. I shall put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That is carried. Thank you very much.